final cookie. It's a holiday chocolate chip cookie. And we'll take our white sugar and our brown sugar. And then some more softened butter there. Oops. There you go. Just mix those all up together there. Main thing you want to do with this is just make sure the brown sugar lumps are all smashed out.
If it just says butter, do you use the unsalted butter all the time, or you just use?
If it just says regular butter, that's the salted butter.
That's the salted butter.
Yes.
And you can't substitute like the butter with like margarine.
Actually, you can, but make sure that it's 80% vegetable oil.
80%.
If it doesn't say vegetable oil on it, look and see the calories. If it is 100 calories per tablespoon, it's at least 80% vegetable oil. You'd want to make sure of that, but yes, you can substitute that.
Do you
Okay.
think it makes a difference?
Flavor-wise, most definitely. The butter definitely gives it a richer flavor. Now you can use, a lot of people, of course, prefer the margarine. It will take a little bit away from the flavor, but not so much that it's going to be really noticeable, unless you're, just a real big connoisseur of cookies or something.
But it doesn't make like a difference, like how the cookie
And the texture and way it's cooking.
Right, like it won't
Now, if it's not the
spread out
80%, you will notice a difference.
Okay.
It can actually cause it to separate a little bit, and so what you'll get is like the edges will be really thin and hard and crispy, or the inside be still about the right texture, but it causes everything to separate there. And so that's the main factor there, is the texture, which of course affects the flavor that way. Okay. Now we're going to take our vanilla, which I set down somewhere. Oh. Okay. Go ahead and make sure that's all the way mixed up through there. Now, taking all of our dry ingredients, as I said before, and went ahead and sifted those all together. So all we need to do is add those in there, along with the egg there. Actually, I'm only doing a half recipe on this one for right now, in case you're wondering why I only had one egg there. Okay. And it's going to be another one that's you'll need like dough. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and fold in the chips, and then of course the pecans. Now I meant to tell you that the other ingredient for these was the cinnamon that I added into the dry ingredients. That adds just a light tang to the cookie, which works out really well that way. Okay, let me get my pecans there. Just fold those in. Now these cookies, when they cook, they don't raise so much like the chocolate ones, but they do flatten out really good. So you definitely want to make sure there's another good 3 inches there in between to give them space so they're not overlapping there. Because a lot of times when it calls, make a one for an inch to inch and a half, you can actually make them, fairly larger. Now this one I do want to keep in a ball, because if I was to flatten that out, the edges would actually burn when the center would still be a little doughy. Because as this one cooks and the chocolate and stuff heats in it, it's going to soften it up, and that's when it's going to start flattening out. But like I said, when you space those, give them enough space there. Of course, if they do overlap, it's not going to affect it. It ain't going to hurt it nothing. It's still going to taste great. You're going to love it. But if you're one of those, you're making cookies, especially for a gift tin or something like that, and going for presentation, just have a good separation there. And these are the ones that, as they cook, they'll turn lighter before they turn darker, just like these did. So as they're cooking, you'll see that nice light texture on it. Then you'll start noticing around the edges where it'll start darkening. So this is where it's up to you how long you want to keep them in there. Do you like your chocolate chip cookies soft, or do you like them crispy? If you like them soft, go ahead and pull them out then. If you like them crispy, give them at least a minute and a half. Continue cooking from there to get them a nice crispy texture. And once that happens, and then voila. Okay. Okay, on average, at least 2 dozen on most of these. The chocolate chip actually makes about 3 dozen on this recipe. So doubling the recipes on these, depending on how many you make, you can make these in large batches and it won't affect it. Just remember, especially with dealing with these, if you are using this for making a large recipe, make sure everything is thoroughly mixed up, because what will happen is if you don't have it mixed up right, you'll have some that'll literally melt as they cook, and then you'll have some that'll get extremely hard. So if you do any of them in small batches, this would be the one I'd probably do that in.
If you're going to have guests over and you're going to have hot chocolate and maybe bake some cookies fresh,
Uh-huh.
if you want to prepare them all, instead of, maybe over the want to ball them out or whatever, or have them in a container, how long could you keep them in the refrigerator? A day or so?
In the refrigerator, oh yeah, you can keep them up to about 7 days if you wanted to.
So you
And
just
yep.
ball them out then?
And you can actually freeze the doughs of all of these. If you wanted to freeze them, if you want to make everything ahead of time, you can do that. Of course, except the marshmallows in there. But most of these, yeah, if you want to go ahead and make them the night before, stick them in the refrigerator, they'll be perfect, perfectly fine for the next day if you want to do that.
If I were sending us some from Texas and they were in a pail, all you had to do was just take them out and put them on.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and pre-portion all of these out, have them set and ready. All you have to do is throw them in the oven if you want them hot. These ones, I'd recommend you serving cold. The rest of these, the other 3, go really good either hot or cold. Of course, chocolate chip, you throw that with milk, it's good regardless. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get this set up then. Let them try some of this.